worship at my home church. I encourage all the wretches to come and sit down. I love Dave's phrase, welcome back scumbags. And, it's good to be here. I want to say a huge thank you to Dave for that first session. Many of you know, my name is John McKinnon. I now minister for the Word One-to-One throughout the UK and Ireland. And I just love the way in which Dave is exhorting us to bring evangelism and discipleship together. The natural fact that we need both and not to have that hard, fast separation that so often exists in our churches. Those of you who know me well will know that to hear somebody say you can do apologetics without doing evangelism is music to my ears. And I think we've done a lot of apologetics which have not shared the gospel. And, I think that's so important for us. And I think all of us can empathize with that message that says our people are not doing it, not sharing their faith as often as we would want them to, and anywhere near as much as we would like them to. And, of course, that starts with ourselves as well. But thanks, Dave, for that. We look forward to you building and all of that in our next session. Let me just say welcome back, Aberdeen and Troon and Leeds. For those of you in Troon, if you want to know what a hit and stick tackle really looks like, have a word with David Hanna, ex-Glasgow Warrior. He's there, and he'll show you how to do that in a really, great way. A great session at lunchtime down there in Troon. I'm sure Dave would do that here for anybody that fancies it in Edinburgh. However, a couple of things you want to draw attention to. To your right, my left, Edinburgh City Mission, Faith Mission Bible College, Christians in Sport, Word One-to-One. I'll get to that last one in a minute or two. But Edinburgh City Mission, Faith Mission Bible College, Christians in Sport. Guys, can I encourage you? Please make a point of talking to these guys. There's nothing worse than being at these kind of events and you just sit on the side and nobody comes to see you. And all of those are ministries that have been dear to my heart over the many, many years of ministry. I've actually served in all three at some point or other, which is good news. Some of you are finding the Christians in Sport, but hard to imagine. But at the end of the day, it is true. And over to your left, my right, Dean here, who's travelled a long way to be with us. Make sure you go and not just look at the books, but buy some, right? Charge it to your church, or if you're struggling, charge it to our church, and Thomas will sort that out, right? And take it from there. But it's great to be back together. But please, make a point of going and speaking to all these folks. One of the things that I've found this morning really, really helpful and really challenging, and as somebody who travels to the UK and Ireland trying to just build confidence in everyday believers to share their faith. I think Dave would probably agree that personal evangelism training, most of the evangelism doesn't get done that way, and it's not the only way. I think it's essential that we do equip in the Ephesians 4 model our people. And one of the guys that did a great job of that in the context of a passion for life was Andrew Agnew. I'm going to invite Andrew, who's here. He's hiding somewhere. There he is. Andrew, come and join us. Let's welcome Andrew as he comes to join us. I'll give you that one. Andrew, you're the pastor. Tell us the church you pastor and a little bit just briefly about that.
We're a church plant of Carrubbers Christian Centre. We are in Wallingford, which is just beside Musselburgh on the outskirts of Edinburgh, and we've been running for about 13 years now, and having Sunday services for about 13 years. Carrubbers did a lot of groundwork and ploughing work and sowing work before my wife and I, who were missionaries in Mexico, came back to plant the church.
Brilliant. One of the things I must do at some point is actually check out how Wallingford got its name. I think it's the most bizarre named place in the East Coast, Wallingford, just outside Edinburgh. But Andrew, in a Passion for Life 2022, we put together the little personal evangelism training videos, and I know that they came both at a great time for you Share a little bit just about that little menu of training videos and how you use them there.
Listen, I hate the way John invited me up saying we did a really good job of Passion for Life. But what I do want to say is that John really inspired when he shared about Passion for Life and about the video series. We just knew, and I knew as a pastor and as a leader in a church, that we really wanted to try to keep helping people to think about evangelism and to keep it a real priority. And as a newer church working in an area and trying to plow up a small ex-mining community of about 4,000 people, we just knew with lots of PR work to do and lots of getting to know people to do. So we took our home group thing just in the church, and we decided to have just an extended time of looking at these videos one after the other for about 3 months. It took us to work our way through them, and thankfully Passion for Life provided the videos so we could just put a computer up on a dining room table and use it with the home groups. And they also provide questions, and we were able to pick the right questions that we thought would help us for our context in Wallyford. And it was really good because it wasn't just that something that we would drip in from time to time, but actually to have a really concentrated few months to look at evangelism. And it was wonderful to see people's attitudes towards it change, and for them to realize actually this is maybe easier than I thought it was. So it was really encouraging.
Any little story, just one little story of encouragement out of that, because I love the way you did ideally what Nick and others had all dreamed of when we produced those videos, was that churches in actual fact would look at this as just an equipping resource and they would make them their own. And I love the way you did that in a small group type thing, working through. Any little story out of that you would share with us, just as an encouragement?
I think it was that we saw it as something that we needed to do everywhere we were. So with our neighbors, with our workplaces, or in our school settings, whoever was looking at the videos would just contextualize it for wherever they were. But the thing that people said, well, we need, what can we do as far as a church all together? Can we do anything? So we actually decided to run Hope Explored at the end of this in order to put into practice what we've been learning and to invite people along. So actually it was just deciding, okay, we're going to take a break from whatever series we're working through in the Bible, and we had the 3 Sundays as a Hope Explored, making church very different and trying to make people feel very relaxed as they came along, and having tables and questions around tables and a bit of singing and watching videos, which is very not like us in Wallyford. We meet in a miners club, in a pub basically, but it worked really well. It was amazing. Brilliant to see the whole church want to do something together.
Excellent. Thank you. That's great, Andrew. Thank you very much indeed. Bless you, mate. Thank you. Folks, let me encourage you to use both the video resources that are there in A Passion for Life. You can just visit the website there, and they're downloadable. And as Andrew said, there's actually some very helpful small group studies that people can pick up on. One of the good things, and I'm really encouraged about this, is that I was speaking to Nick a little while back, and I'm in the process of going to redo all of the videos just to keep them current, keep them fresh, keep them live, and also to add hopefully a few more into it. That'll take a little bit of funding again. So if you're very wealthy and want to back that and support that, have a word with Nick. He didn't ask me to do that. I'm just saying that to you. Then you can put something into the pot. And perhaps that's something that 1 or 2 churches might want to think about supporting, just because we know that if we can invest in that, we're investing not just in our own church, but in many other churches at the same time. I'd say one thing about the word one-to-one. It's very simple for me today. There's a little book there we'll produce for church leaders and for those stirring up evangelism, just about empowering people in the church for relational evangelism. And all I'd say to you is just take 1 to half a dozen of those away with you and use them, and it saves me carrying them back the train as well. But in actual fact, respond to that. And in terms of if we can help in any way, get in touch with us, just john@theword1to1.com. Really looking forward to session 2, developing mission pathways for the lost. And I think that's something that just stirs all of our hearts. So let's pray for Dave as he comes to lead us in session 2. And then we're going to think here about developing those mission pathways. Let's pray. Our gracious Father, we do thank you that the song in each one of our hearts is Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound that saves wretches like ourselves. And Father, we thank you that we join together today as brothers and sisters who love you, who worship you, who long to magnify you with all that we are. And we long day by day just to be equipped by your word and by your spirit to make much of Jesus. And we thank you for our dear brother Dave, and we thank you for his heart, we thank you for his passion, we thank you for his zeal, and we pray, Lord, that he'll be able to build on where he's been with us already this day and help us to think through, to consider, to pray through those pathways for lost people to hear your voice, to respond to your call, to come to know and to love and to live for you. In Jesus' name, amen.
You know, as evangelicals, we're meant to be the evangelism people. We're meant to be not just the Bible for Christians people, we're meant to be the evangelism people. The people who evangelize boldly, courageously, zealously, regardless of the response. And yet all too often, one of the great dangers that we face in discouragement and in tough soil is we can end up becoming people who believe functionally that we have a God who can save anyone, but probably won't. He probably won't. Let me read to you the final words of the book of Acts, Acts 28. The apostle is in Rome, and he's again gone to the synagogues to speak to the Jewish leadership. They have rejected him again. And so he, as the Lord Jesus did before him, quotes Isaiah, "Go to this people and say, you will be ever hearing but never understanding. You will be ever seeing but never perceiving. From this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their ears, see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them." And Paul turns to them and says this, Acts 28:28. "Therefore I want you to know that God's salvation has been sent to the Gentiles, and they will listen." Dear friends, we believe in a God who can and does save people. Not just save people, saves the worst of the worst. And we know that for certain. Why? Look around you. I don't know about you, but I got a front row view to my own sin. Front row seat. I'm the worst person you've never met. There is no one outside the power of the gospel. God saves people every single day. He will do so, Peter promises, until he returns. We have to just pursue and go with confidence that he's not done. The first conversion we're going to speak about now is conversion number 1, which is thinking about how we actually convert non-Christian people. All of us here have a desire to see that happen, but how does it actually take place? Well, just as it was for the first time, I always like starting at the ending. So I think what we need to do is look at 2 questions to answer before we begin thinking about the how. You're on the screen now. First of all, how do people become Christians? And secondly, where does this happen most often? How do people become Christians? Where does this happen most often? And the answer to those 2 questions must guide and shape what we do. If what we're being shaped by is otherwise than the answer to these questions, it means it's a confirmation bias tradition that we're trying to follow because we like it. But we need to be driven by how people become Christians and where it happens the most often. So first of all, how do people become Christians? Well, the Bible is clear. People become Christians through the gospel. The death, the resurrection of the Lord Jesus Christ, that is the power of salvation. Let me also offer that for 2,000 years, what we've been able to see is that whilst the means by which people hear and respond to the gospel is often different, in the vast majority of cases, you will find 4 things in common in the vast majority of cases. Now, brother, does this work? Should I do that, or do you want to do it? You do it or me? I'll try it. Hold on. You do it? Is it on? You told me to do that. One job I had. Okay, let me try. Boy, I'll take over. Thank you so much. Thanks, Thomas. The vast majority of cases of all conversions for 2,000 years, there are 4 things in common: the word, plus people, plus time, plus prayer. Conversion occurs through the hearing of God's word proclaimed. God most often uses people to proclaim and witness the power of the word. People most often, not always, but most often, need time to understand the truth of God's word, or even if it is an immediate conversion, they need time to establish themselves and edify themselves as part of being one of God's people. And all of this is done in a humble dependence upon the God of all salvation. Now, let me just offer this to you. Understanding those 4 pillars of conversion, the essentiality of the word plus people plus time plus prayer in conversion, means if we're aiming to see people converted to Christ, then what we need to do is shape our evangelistic efforts around engaging non-Christian people with the word over time among Christians who are the living example of lives changed by that word, whilst being prayerfully dependent on God. Now, in order to do that, many churches, and the churches that flourish the most, by flourish I mean to say see the most conversions over decades, that I've observed and worked with, have decided that the wisest thing to do, the wisest first step to make, is to plan and implement a mission pathway. To plan and implement a mission pathway. In other words, to think through how those 4 principles are actually being applied in the efforts and endeavours to reach the lost. Now, mission pathway, I've got the definition there, is just the way in which your church engages with non-Christians. It's a bit like liturgy. Everyone has liturgy, whether you've thought it through or not, you have a liturgy. You do have a pathway in your church already. There is a way in which non-Christian people engage with your church. This is one of those examples of words I don't love using and thinking about, pathways and programs and so on, yet it's just a helpful way of helping us assess reality. I'll chuck on the screen an example of one. Not the one, but a one. You see that this pathway separates the interactions we have with non-Christians into 4 sections. Now, I won't go into too much detail. They're fairly self-explanatory. Number 1 is contact. So just about multiplying how many non-Christians we engage with as much as possible. So to engage with as many non-Christians on a surface level, but just to engage with as many. Secondly, connect is about moving to the right with those people, so connecting on a deeper level with the non-Christian people. Traditionally, those were the things that we would probably classify, as pre-evangelistic events. Thirdly, conversion. That refers to the ministry in which you hope to see people converted. And 4, church life. The church is both the starting block and the finish line of evangelism. We save people into God's church. If they don't like church, they're going to hate heaven. If you can't understand the Australian accent, you're going to hate heaven because God speaks with an Australian accent. We all know that. Church life is where we aim for all Christians to exist as committed and active members of a Bible-believing church. Now, pathways like this are a helpful assessment and planning tool. You can see with the arrow, it just helps us understand that there is a direction that things are pointing to. They also help us assess how things are going and can be very valuable in planning. And in fact, that's what I want you to do just now in your booklet. I want you to just take a moment and write out those 4 steps: contact, connect, conversion, and church life. And I want to give you 1 minute to just write down what ministries is your church currently doing which you could classify into each of those steps. So I'll give you 1 minute. You can chat about it with the people around you if you want, that's fine. But just 1 minute to write down what are the ministries you guys are doing that are contact, that are connect, that are conversion, that are church life. Just take a minute and do that now. Now, what often happens in this exercise, which, by the way, is a very helpful exercise to do in general in the life of your church, is generally speaking, when we're honest, the diagram will end up looking a bit like a camel with two humps. Okay, that the camel will have a big hump for contact, a big hump for connect, and then a dip down for conversion, and then a slight rise for church life. That is true everywhere. That actually, if you consider where you explicitly pour effort and energy into seeing conversions in your church, well, the vast majority of churches spend far, far more energy on the contact and connect than they ever do in conversion. You see, I want to offer to you guys that the power of the pathway for us is actually not as a planning tool. It's not so that you can develop some sort of evangelism flowchart where the non-Christian will go this, then this, then this. If you think that, it just means you really have spent no time with non-Christians, because they very rarely do what we want them to do. In fact, you can trust that they won't do anything they want you to do. They'll do whatever they want to do. No, the power of the pathway is not about establishing an evangelism flowchart. It's not about the planning, it's about perspective. The pathway's greatest strength is to help you see what you should be doing clearly so that you can prioritize making the main thing, and implementing the main thing above all others. You see, it's great for us to think about our contact with non-Christians, our connections, and building those things, the way we engage with non-Christian people in all these types of ways. However, let me clarify something of such critical importance that I'm going to repeat it slowly for the benefit of the people in Leeds. I'll repeat it slowly, over and over again, because this is the most common mistake in Australia and the UK that churches make. Are you ready? The placement of each step in this pathway is not indicative of its importance, nor is it indicative of the order in which it should be established. That's such a long sentence, I won't say it again, just for time. Well before you start even dreaming about contact and connect, or planning for people's establishment in the church life, it is utterly critical that you fixate and focus on one step of the pathway above all others. Step 3, conversion. You must focus your attention and energy on the place you expect people genuinely have a genuine expectation that people can come and become Christians. Now, there's 3 reasons why. Firstly, it's the most important step. Success in evangelism is making disciples, not getting more new non-Christian contacts in your address book. It must be prioritized. If you do not do it first, it will not happen. It will not happen because it'll be so consumed and distracted and just drowned in other ministries. What that means is that you end up having a joke without the punchline. And this is a pandemic in British and Irish churches. You have endless attempts to engage with non-Christian people. More curry nights than India, okay? You have more sports nights than anyone. You do this and quiz nights and so on and so forth. Allow me to advocate for every single one of those endeavors. And where do you bring them to? Nowhere. You run your evangelism course, you run your evangelistic conversion step with an intern out the back in a shed. It's a disgrace. It's an utter disgrace. It's not you, it's Australia. It's a disgrace. It's like having an engagement party where you hire the Sheraton, a 5-star hotel. It's amazing, it looks incredible, but the wedding is a shotgun wedding and the bride's wearing tracksuit pants and the groom's in flip-flops. Friends, we bring people to the point of conversion and then we walk away because we have somehow fallen into the trap that we think that the contact and connect work of evangelism is evangelism. It's not evangelism. Evangelism is exclusively where the gospel of Jesus Christ is proclaimed with a call to respond in repentance and faith. That doesn't mean you don't do the other things, but it means if you don't have that thing as the big part of what you're doing, forget about it. You can tell I'm slightly passionate about this. Secondly, it's the most arduous step. Nothing I'm going to talk about is a quick fix. There is no quick fix in evangelism. It's a long fix, and then you've got to keep fixing it forever. It'll carry on until you're dead. But what we are going to talk about is a real fix, something that I have seen and observed work. It's worth every minute, every bit of sweat. But the first part of the word success is, Paul Brennan, what's the first part of the word success? Suck. And you're going to suck before you succeed. Paul told me not to use that line, so that's why I got him to do it. You've got to suck. It's going to take work. It's going to be hard. It's arduous. The third step, well, I'll come back to that. I'll show you the third step after we've talked about how this all takes place. So let's think about that conversion step. Question number 2 of the questions I said at the beginning is, where does that most happen often today? Where does this happen most often today? How do people become Christians? Word plus people plus time plus prayer, the gospel. Where does that happen most often? Well, as we've identified already, people become Christians in a wide variety of ways. We praise God for his mercy in the conversion of all these people in all these ways. However, that again has led churches to a common temptation, particularly in the UK, more than Australia actually, right here in the UK, which is to throw the handful of darts at the dartboard technique and hope one of them sticks. Because people become Christians in such a wide variety of ways, we do a wide variety of evangelistic endeavors. We do 100 little things and just hope that one of them will connect, and will actually do anything. Now, if that worked, I'd be all for it. And there may come a time where that does work, and I'll be all for it. However, for the churches in our shared context, in countries who hate God, for the churches that see the most amount of conversions over the most amount of time, they don't do that. They do less better. And less better has meant a focus on the same 2 ministries as their conversion step. Number 1, an evangelistic course that is reliable, repeatable, and continual. Now, I've called it here, it's also referred to as a conversion engine. Now, forgive that expression, but that's just referring to the fact that I'm going to talk about evangelistic courses, but it's a description, not a prescription, if you understand that. So I want to say, in your context, it might look slightly different. So think of it, I'm talking about an engine where you hope to see people converted, but I want to offer the churches who see it the most, it's an evangelistic course. And secondly, a focus on a gospel-driven, warmly welcoming weekly gathering. And again, that's not just observationally true, that's backed up by the data from Australia, from the United States, and right here in the UK. The churches that see the highest amount of growth, the most consistent stream of people won to Christ, see it take place through personal invitation from Christians to either church or to a course. Now, I'm going to think about both of those things individually before considering how they interact together. So let me start with the evangelistic course. Evangelistic courses have proven time and time again to be the place where people are most likely to become converted to Christ as adults in the context of a local church, not the only place. And I want to say, are done in particular with the partnership of a one-to-one of reading the Bible with non-Christians. It is particularly powerful. But I'm just going to speak about the course. In the next session, I'll talk about one-to-one in more detail. But this is not against that. This is in partnership with that. But let me just speak to courses for a moment. It makes sense why courses work sociologically, but also theologically. Done correctly, they provide an amazing place to see all 4 of those evangelistic applications take place. Word, people, time, prayer. At their most basic level, evangelistic courses should have their aim to be the clear and engaging explanation of the gospel with a call to repentance and faith. If the evangelistic course that you use or are thinking about using does not have that as its main aim, forget about it. It's fake news, it's fluffing the pillows of the damned. We need to tell them the truth of the gospel. Secondly, people. As we know, people engage the word more helpfully and effectively in the context of relationships, Courses give great opportunities for non-Christians to interact and engage with Christians. Thirdly, time. The word disciple means learner. For most people who become Christians as adults, regardless of their Christian heritage or upbringing, it is the result of several hearings of the gospel as is explained. God is able and does, of course, miraculously unveil the truth of the gospel to people through his Spirit. That's how conversion happens. More often than not, though, it's not a quick hit. It does happen that way sometimes, but often a gradual procedure. And finally, prayer. All of this takes place under the humble dependence and joyful thankfulness of our great God who is responsible for all of it. Now, evangelistic courses are not the only place, but they are the place that most commonly happens. Now, of course, for you guys, this is not news. I'm in the United Kingdom. You guys invented several things, some of them useful. Evangelistic courses among them. I have no doubt that every single person here most likely has run courses for years. However, this has led and may have led right now, for some of you, some people to a very common objection to courses, which I just want to spend a moment touching on. The objection is that whilst there was a time in which courses engaged with the outside world in an effective manner, in the current culture and religious climate that we live amongst, that is not the case. That the days of putting on a course, advertising it over Christmas, 9 lessons and carols or whatever the Presbyterian version of that is, or Baptist, or whatever you are, FIC, whatever you do. Okay, advertising the course publicly and just seeing a bunch of people turn up and then they'd come to become Christians, those days are long gone. People will not come to church anymore. They're against church. They hate Christians. So the thing, therefore, is to go out. That we've just got to do things out there, not in here. We've got to sort of do all that all the time, build people up that way, or even pre-evangelistic events at the pub or the club or whatever it is, and then that's the pathway forward. Now, I completely understand that response. Let me assure you, Australia is just as post-Christian as England and Scotland and Northern Ireland. No, not Northern Ireland. We have rejected the gospel in the 1950s, profoundly moved away from those things. People in Australia are biblically ignorant at best, hostile to Christianity at worst. However, as much as I agree with the diagnosis of that problem, I am utterly persuaded the prognosis is critically incorrect. It offers a solution that does not actually address the problem at all, and it doesn't produce the much hoped for results, and it can distract us from the prognosis that works. You see, in Australia and the UK, the churches that have flourished identified the same cultural trends and patterns. Yes, there is a rejection of the gospel, a wider biblical ignorance, a rise in hostility, but came to a very different conclusion. That the decrease in course effectiveness was not because there's some intrinsic problem in courses. The problem is not with the course model or the course content, but rather the course format needed adaptation and work and evolution. In other words, the way the course was being run was the issue, not the course. It depended on something not present anymore, so it actually needed to change in what it depended on to flourish. And so the best thing to do was to adapt and to develop the format so it would keep working. And over the past 12 years of my personal life as working in evangelism, time and time again, not just where I've been involved, but over and over again in churches where they see Christians, you've seen not only them adapting to culture the same way, they've also then as a result done the same thing after it. It's worth saying that the churches who struggle with courses also continually make the same mistakes as one another. So what is it that churches have done to make courses still flourish and that I want to advocate to you to consider? They use the evangelistic course to engage, evangelize, equip and establish non-Christians with the word over a prolonged period of time in the presence of people dependent on God. They apply word plus people plus time plus prayer effectively and press repeat. But what does that mean? How is that any different to what it was before? Well, let me just explain it in a bit more detail. First of all, the word. My dear friends, in the face of hostility and biblical ignorance, the temptation everywhere is to believe that we need to start our evangelism further back. We need to win a hearing. And that's why we then embrace sort of lower bar things of apologetics or social events or giving people the Christian worldview. And yet the churches who flourish have not done that. No, the opposite. They have battened down on the gospel as the opening start, as the gospel is front and center. In fact, the churches who see the most conversions are the ones who run the courses that are considered the most conservative, the most explicitly Christian, the least amount of apologetic, non-evangelistic material. Yes, it's presented engagingly and clearly, but it is not pushed back later until a hearing has been won, when the worldview has been tried on. It is unashamedly Christ-centric from the get-go and continues with the same theme. Through sin, the wrath of God, the cross, the resurrection, the call to repent and believe. The word is central to evangelism. The word is central to the churches who see conversions. It should stand to reason, and yet it's not. But it should be absolutely common sense. Secondly, people. My dear friends, it stands to reason that non-Christians greatly benefit from exposure to Christian people. Over 90% of adult converts point to a Christian, implicitly or explicitly being responsible to helping them start the process of investigating faith. However, the churches who have seen the most fruit have realized this is not only true at the beginning of evangelism, but throughout the entire process of evangelism. Therefore, increasing the number of Christians that the non-Christian knows throughout the evangelistic process is an incredibly effective way of multiplying the positive impact of Christians on the lives of non-Christians. Now, what that means is simple, but glaringly absent. It means they have dedicated themselves to increasing the exposure of non-Christians, not to one other Christian, but to groups of non-Christians in a place where the word is effectively proclaimed. The greatest group of non-Christians we have the ability to reach are the ones who know Christians. And the greatest ability we have to reach those non-Christians is by multiplying their relationships with more and more Christians. What that has meant is that rather than running the course out the back with an intern pressing play on a video, dedicating Christians to being involved in the course, through the course, with the course. How? Well, I'll speak about that more in the next session, but let me just say very quickly. Firstly, through developing a bring-vitation culture, not an invitation culture. So telling the Christian family as you advertise the course, don't invite someone, but bring someone. And then of the leader, their dedication to following up the Christian who's brought the non-Christian, not the non-Christian. Allow the Christian friend to follow up the non-Christian. You follow up the Christian. And secondly, through the establishment and development of a team to help run the course. Now thirdly, time. And this is the essential piece that I'm persuaded is utterly counterintuitive, yet is continually present. The temptation, when thinking people are starting further back, is that our evangelism has to start further back. But I've already said that's not true. It's inadequate, it's an ineffective way of conducting evangelism. So how do we conquer that? We have conquered it by realizing that people don't need to start further back. We don't start further back because people are further back. What we need to do with people who start further back is instead go further on with them. So ensuring that the mission pathway, the conversion step of your mission pathway isn't 5 weeks of gospel explanation and then see you off to a small group where you're studying Leviticus this term. But rather, slowly, carefully, lovingly, teaches these precious people, some of whom are not yet converted, some of whom are just converted, the foundational building blocks of the gospel over a prolonged period of time. 6 months minimum, 12 months best. So this is what that looks like. At the church I was just serving at EV, and the other churches I've been involved in, we would finish the course, 5-week course. On the last week, we'd say, friends, we've had such a great time being together. We actually don't want to stop, and so we're not going to. You're going to have a feedback form come out in a little bit, and there's a box there saying if you'd like to come back next week for a Bible study. We're going to meet same place, same time, right here. It's going to be a little bit different, but I'm going to be there, and John and Judy, they're going to be there as well. And we're just going to do what we've done for the last 5 weeks. We're going to open the Bible and begin to discuss it with one another and chat about it in a bit more detail. There'll still be coffee and dessert, that sort of stuff. You can let us know if you're keen to come tick in the box. Now, here's the secret. They still get followed up, even if they don't tick the box. We still call them and invite them. So the next week they come, and guess what? It's a culture clash. It's completely different to the course where there's been 20 Christians in the room. People who've brought people, the team of 10 people. You've got 10 non-Christians there. There's a vibe, there's a buzz. It's done well. But then they come that week, it's like, man, there's 7 non-Christians or brand new Christians, 2 leaders, and maybe another Christian friend who's brought them along because I've asked them because I wasn't sure that person would come. They're sitting around in a circle now. Now, for some people, that's terrifying. So again, we're very careful. We make sure people don't have to speak, they don't have to answer questions, but rather we just study the Bible. What do we study? Well, the course that I run looks at the Gospel of Luke over 5 weeks. So what we do is then we do a Bible study through Luke for 10 weeks. We then do, is everyone familiar with Just for Starters, 7 basic Bible studies for believers, a great resource. We do that, foundational doctrines of Christianity there. We then do Philippians, another gospel for 6 weeks, and then we do an Old Testament overview. We do that over a year. Now, in the course of that year, the results are astonishing. These baby Christians, or not yet Christians, if they're not going to become a Christian, they've left by around 3 weeks, which is terrific because it means they're the people who we invite back to the course when we run it again. But those people have been established in several key parts of Christianity. What are they? The Bible, the Word. They don't just learn what the Bible says, they learn how to read the Bible. They can read the Bible on their own now. About church, because week 3, week 5, week 9, week 12, we say, hey guys, we're going to meet at McDonald's up the street and I'm going to buy you all a hash brown. We're going to go to church together. Let's go together. People, they meet more people. They keep doing that over and over. And they have finally, there's this way where they've established a pattern of church life. They meet during the week to read the Bible. They meet on Sundays. So success in evangelism is not people coming to the course for 5 weeks. It's people leaving after a year into the regular life of church. We don't start further back to pander to a culture which is running away from the gospel. We go further on with these precious people who need to be slowly fed. And that's what we do. You know what we treat them like? We treat them like you would want the person you love the most who's not a Christian, who has turned up to a church wanting to find out the truth about Jesus. How do you want them to be treated? Do you want them to be told, would you like to be a Christian? You want to go to heaven? You're in. Okay, here's Leviticus. Or would you like them to be cared for and loved and pastored and fed the word slowly over time? Can you think of that person? Who is that person? Imagine they come to a church in my city. What experience do you want them to have? I want every non-Christian to have that experience. To be loved that way. And of course, all of this takes place in the presence of prayerful people. And these people become prayerful people. Now, my friends, it's critical to understand that this part of what I'm talking about, the length, is not an addition to the pathway. It is the pathway. It's not an addition to the conversion step. It is the conversion step. If you don't have the what's next, don't do anything. That means that the course, the initial 5 weeks, it's actually not the main game. It's the front door. The main game happens in the weeks afterwards. We see most people converted in the weeks that follow. So when courses work, what do? Well, here's some words. They're biblical, reliable, repeatable, sustainable, continual. They don't cut new believers off at the knees. They give them what they need over time to help them grow. They don't undermine relational connectivity or involvement of the church family. They utterly depend on it, because the biggest funnel of non-Christians coming to the course is not the Christmas event that's happened before it. It's the Christians bringing non-Christian people. It doesn't depend on an event before it in order to flourish, because non-Christian people who come to events don't make steps like that. It depends on Christians having confidence that the course proclaims the word powerfully, effectively, over time. It's adaptable. You're able to grow it or shrink it as the time may be, but it's continual. Churches who see the most conversions do this and press repeat. And the big change for me in my UK interactions has been that I'm not convinced that in the past you needed church people to bring people. I think that's been a big change for you guys. But you know, Australia is so different to you because in Australia, our fake Christianity was largely Roman Catholic and Eastern Orthodox. We had huge immigration from Malta, Italy, Greece, and that meant our numbers ticking the Christian box were, the majority of which were Catholics, who are, by the way, some of the people that the most likely to be converted in Australia. So we have never, since 1961, been able to just put something on and have people turn up. We have always had to depend on people bringing people. And maybe that's your story as well, but I want to offer, if so, that's not what I've been told by many, who would say, oh no, we used to just do this thing and people would come. And that's why courses had a bad rep, because they would undermine the church family. But for us, we've always had to depend on people bringing people. And in fact, as we'll see next time, it's a key part of the way you convert Christians to disciple making. Now, the other part, of course, as I said, is the church gathering. I won't go too much into that except to say, dear friends, the church gathering is one of the most powerful, profound, evangelistic front doors that you have. And guess what? It happens every week, I hope. Every week. It is where the word, in the presence of people, over time, depending on God and prayer, takes place. Your music may suck. You need to fix that if you can over time. But even if it does suck, it has the word plus people plus time and prayer. Your welcoming might be a bit shambolic. You need to fix it. But it has the word plus people plus time plus prayer. Believe it or not, you don't need to become a seeker service. You don't need to take away the word for the Sunday service to be effective. If you do that, you will do the distinct opposite thing of what you're trying to do. The thing that makes the Sunday gathering such a powerful gospel witness is the word with Christians. Why? Because Jesus tells us it will be. Love one another. By this, the world will know that you are my disciples. As we engage with one another, displaying the word, it's a powerful witness to non-Christians, not to mention all the other parts that happen during a service. Hearing the word preached, seeing the word in action in baptism and communion, meeting Christians before and after the service. It's essential, though, that we identify there are non-Christians present at every single Sunday service, some long-standing, long-suffering spouses, but also guests who come every week. So we need to be much better at triaging them into the place where non-Christians, we hope to see them converted, and not just hoping and crossing our fingers that it'll happen. Come on, wake up, it won't. You need to identify them. But by the way, those non-Christians are the people most likely to be converted. You could this week dedicate yourself to identifying as many non-Christians who come to your church and converting those people. Now, we'll break for Q&A in a moment, but I did say there is a third reason why this step is the most important. And here it is. It's the most effective step. Look at the pathway again. When you focus on the conversion steps, you realize that when done right, it doesn't just achieve the step of converting non-Christians. It does all four of the steps simultaneously in one. It functions in such a way as to achieve these steps. When you pour your effort and energy into making the course socially warm, yet evangelistically sharp, you achieve all the social warmth of your pre-evangelistic events anyway. But you have the gospel there. When you realize you don't need special courses, membership courses for new Christians, but actually that it happens by people going to church and then being in a Bible study, you realize this is part of that process. It achieves all four of them at the same time. And the more you add before it, the more your Christians will be tempted to bring their friends to the lower bar non-gospel event and not to the place where they hear the Bible explained. Don't give it to them. But it does then oblige you to make sure that your gospel event, your conversion event, your step number 3 is actually something that doesn't suck. That doesn't mean it has to be big. It just needs to be thoughtful and carefully put on. So we've looked at the mission pathway, word plus people plus time plus prayer. thinking through the way your church engages with non-Christians, I've offered focus on step number 3. Most churches, an evangelistic step, church gathering, and then a good step 3 turns into 1, 2, and 4. I will break now for questions. There's a sort of overview there. I'll invite Rachel to come up.